Yeah.
Speaking of Bushites, in 2 years, unless of course he decides to make himself dictator of the United States, and
Well, he's already done that. It's just a question of whether we believe it.
You know, for life.
He's the decider for life, I think.
Where do you expect the movement to be without the actual bad guy in office, considering that we have a Democrat in office after that?
Yeah, well, that depends on the Democrat. You know, if we get a halfway honest Democrat, and I'm not sure who that would be, but that would be,
Don't forget his father.
well, you know, Dean and Kucinich have both made noises about 9/11. You know, Dean opened his mouth about 9/11, and the next moment they got him up there shouting, they cut his mic, or they turned on the mic, I guess, and got him screaming like a maniac, and then they put out the scream, the scream, the scream, and they just knocked him out of the race right after he talked about 9/11. Kucinich is leery, but you know, he's been backtracking and then stepping forward. But 9/11 blogger has an article on Kucinich mentioning 9/11 in his speech just yesterday, I think. So, and Ron Paul is totally hip to it too. So Ron Paul is sort of the libertarian guy who's willing to take this on.
He's running Republican too, isn't he?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a big wing of these conservatives who understand this stuff. But as far as a regular Democrat, somebody, you know, a money Democrat like you know, Hillary or yeah, it's those, or Obama, those people, they're feeding from the same trough, and we would just need to see them as no different, really, I think, from Bush and Cheney.
And at the worst, they can fizzle out a lot of movements once they get people. When people are when Democrats in office, people are typically a little bit more happy than they would be with a Republican.
Oh yeah, like because Clinton was in office, the thought didn't even cross my mind that these people talking about Oklahoma City being a government job. I just thought they were completely crazy. Oh, you know, a bunch of crazy militia guys out there. But since I woke up to 9/11, thanks to Bush and Cheney being back, and looked at Oklahoma City, and my goodness, I mean that's just as obvious. You know, once you see all the news footage of just tons of local news footage of them carrying all these unexploded bombs out of the building, you know, and then that general made the report saying, "Well, this is ridiculous. A truck bomb couldn't do anything remotely like this. It's military-grade explosives." So yeah, this has been going on for a while, and just putting a Democrat in isn't going to fix it.
While you're on the topic of Oklahoma City, I read somewhere that the same company was responsible for removing the steel.
Yeah, Controlled Demolitions Incorporated did the cleanup at both Oklahoma City and at the World Trade Center, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, their website has changed recently too.
Which website?
Reading on it.
Controlled Demolition.
And it said there's like a topic on there that says sensitive jobs for sensitive jobs involving the government, or touchy demolitions. It's like, what else could this be? I don't know. It's just odd. I mean.
Yeah, right at the top there. Weren't you the one who told me that piece?
You need a password to log on to that page?
No. It
It's
changed because
like
I looked at it
center.
early on, and it's now changed. It's almost like they're giving you more or something. It's really
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying, "Nah, what you gonna do about it?"
They are saying that.
Well, yeah, some people have speculated about how this thing seems awfully obvious once you stop to take a look at it. One of the obvious giveaways is when Bush lingered in the school in Florida, making no effort to do his job as commander-in-chief of a nation under surprise attack, and the Secret Service made no effort to protect him for an hour. He was in a known location for an hour, and he lollygagged and took his own sweet time. Read about pet goats for almost 10 minutes after the second plane hit the building. Yeah, and he's the commander-in-chief. He's got a nuclear suitcase. He's got a it's called a nuclear football, and if the instant there's any hint of an attack on the country, Bush is whisked to safety. He's the only guy with the codes in the nuclear briefcase. But here he just lollygags for an hour, and then takes off in Air Force One with no fighter jet protection an hour later. So people say, was this on purpose? Are they sending us a message? Morgan Reynolds, the former Bush administration member, says they're crying out for help. Stop us before we kill again.
Yeah.
And so that's what we have to do, I think.
The people who did it are funding bizarre theories. Because they're
right.
so bizarre that no one will believe it.
Well, there are some people who think that, because some of the theories about how this was done include things like high-tech weapons that we don't understand too much about, that could be described as beam weapons and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that's complete. Well, Jim Fetzer, I think, is an honest guy who's been he's been led down the garden path by his own ego and by some people who are baiting him. What he's had to say is mostly pretty sensible, believe it or not, if you actually look at what he said rather than the way he's been mischaracterized. But anyway, there are these ideas that the people who put forth seemingly bizarre theories about how certain things may have happened could be government plans trying to make us look stupid. Personally, I don't worry too much about that. Just I'd say use your common sense. And since the evidence is so overwhelming on this, the demolitions, the non-military response for almost 2 hours, the Bush in the school in Florida, there are so many of these things that are such massive smoking guns that you don't really need to get into, well, how did they do it? Did they use exotic weaponry or not? How did they do it plane switcheroo like Northwoods or not? You know, that's not really the issue. I mean, I'm sure some people sort of take a perverse pleasure in hashing this out, as I know Jim Spencer does. But the important thing, I think, is to organize to change the world based on the fact that we now understand that this was an inside job, rather than worry about exactly how it was accomplished. And Rabbi Michael Lerner makes a very strong argument about that in the book that I edited, that just came out here, this 9/11 and American Empire, Christians, Jews, and Muslims Speak Out. Rabbi Lerner points out that, well, he's not quite sure what happened, but he admits there's a strong case for inside job. So he says that good people need to be laying the groundwork for the spiritual and political change that we need to make happen when this thing blows up into a Watergate type situation. Otherwise, he says, it'll just be another Watergate. We'll convict a few people of treason, blame it all on these bad guys, you know, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. And just as Watergate didn't really change anything, this won't change anything either. So Rabbi Lerner says we need to be following, he advocates this whole spiritual renewal program of his own as a way to focus on the political changes that we should make from this issue, rather than just debating about what happened. And his is actually kind of my favorite essay in here, because he went from, you know, from being kind of wishy-washy on this issue to penning a very powerful essay, just as we were hitting deadline.